So, welcome to the podcast this week. We often see when we're in engagements, marketing's coming up with great plans, and it just looks like the segmentation makes sense, the value proposition, and then when it hits reality, the salespeople actually are doing something different. And so we find that there's this lack of bridge that occurs. And so what we're going to talk about is not only how we're figuring out ways to build that bridge, but how AI is helping to do that even better and easier. So which you guys want to take this on?
Well, with Sean, would you start let's talk about what we've seen that's really worked well in the past, and then maybe I can layer on the AI component of what AI
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
improving about it all.
one of there's two failure modes that we see for some of the work that we do, or potential failure modes, because rarely do people fail. They just hit this hurdle they've got to get over. So you've spent a few days and you've developed some pretty good, robust strategies, some positioning, some segmentation. You know what you want to say roughly, and you know who you want to say it to. That's sort of the two outcomes you might expect from one of our sessions. And then you've got to execute, of course. And the two ways this can go wrong is, one is if you're predominantly a sales-led organization, then we've seen salespeople not be involved in the creation of the messaging. That's definitely a no-no, by the way. You want to get as broad a church as possible. But if the salespeople aren't carrying that message out to the marketplace, that's one way that the business can fail. And the second one is just not creating the messaging and the content, all of the digital stuff that everyone's involved in now, whether that's a website and so forth. If that doesn't mirror all the good work you've done, you're losing an opportunity. One of the solutions, in particular for the sales force, is what we'd call a playbook, a way of documenting and creating messaging that's useful, that's built on what you did in the classroom. So if you decide your positioning is about saying we care about patients more than process or systems, then you may have a segment called Care in Doctors, and you would have a playbook that would say, with this segment, speak mostly about patient outcomes, not about technical inputs. Here are some great questions to ask. Here are some things you should avoid saying. And as long as it resonates with the salespeople, they say this makes a ton of sense. And by the way, that's best achieved by having them in the room creating the messaging to start with. And that's how we attack that failure mode. So a playbook for us is how we take all the good stuff we've done and turn it into practical, usable, customer-facing dialogue. And the book, or the digital version these days, is how we do that.
Yeah. So it's in the past that's taken a fair amount of effort to create
To
those
say the
playbooks on
least.
behalf of our clients. And what's changing and what AI is bringing to this conversation is two things. First of all, just the amount of rapidity that can be brought to the process of drafting the playbook. If you are workshopping things and we're putting them into our AI system and AI gets trained up on the strategy and the processes that Sean just outlined, the idea of creating a sales playbook that differentiates the message and all the aspects of the sales call for the different segments becomes immediate, and people can begin to say, oh yeah, I thought that needs-based segmentation stuff was powerful, but I didn't know how we were going to practically execute on it. And typically what people have done without the playbook is just take one or two of those segments and say, hey, we're just going to build all of our messaging around these two targets. But what AI enables to happen very quickly is you can see very quickly what you should or shouldn't say to each segment, and it's different. It's what really good sales people do anyway, but it makes that knowledge, those specifics, accessible to people of lesser skill or lesser experience, and it begins to act as a real playbook. It gets everyone on the same page, and that page that everyone is on is talking to customers about what they care about and not saying the things that they don't care about. So that's the part of it, the speed at which and the ease of which that can be done via an AI system that's trained up on your strategy is amazing. I think the other thing is something that we talked about in another podcast. I think that people have always thought again about needs-based segmentation. That's great, but I don't know, what segment this client that I'm going to visit today fits in. It could be in this segment, it could be in that segment. And the aspect of the playbook that we love is not only does it quickly give you examples of your customers and your accounts in each segment, but it can do your whole account book, your book of accounts. It can tell you for every single one of your accounts where they likely fit. Now, it might not get it 100% right, but it'll probably get it 70 to 80% right because it goes out immediately and looks at websites and annual reports and anything that's written or said about the company and says, wow, they sound like a precision seeker versus, a customer centric, customizer kind of. And so those are the two things that AI is kind of bringing to what has always been a labor intensive but amazing best practice that we've seen.
Yeah. It also, to your point, Tom, allows the rep to stay on top of trends that are happening. So let's just say that you're selling, pumps into Cleveland and there's an issue going on in Cleveland. It allows you to really stay on top of issues that are happening. So it's more dynamic than, we did research 2 years ago and here's the data and, it gets so stale. But in this way, it enables the salespeople want to make sure that they are armed with all of the most recent information, even if like one of the hospitals just published a big study that the reps should be really aware of, or some of the doctors have. So it helps that way. And then in reverse, if the reps, which they should be doing all their call reports, it allows you to capture those. Now, if some companies we talk to, it's static still, the reps are writing out handwritten reports. What AI can do is help transcribe that and then be able to inform marketing and strategy of what's happening in there. If you're more, if you're more up to date with your sales systems, you still have a lot of data. And the beauty of this is it allows you to just take and summarize it and say what's relevant, and then it's a two-way ongoing conversation now between marketing and sales, and both are learning from each other much better.
And I think that's such a key point, because you think about the way this used to be done. Well, and we've seen some pretty fancy bits of collateral, right? You guys will know what I'm talking about. You've got some that aren't just a leaflet with a few little bullet points on. You've got some pretty hardcore stuff that slides out and flips up, and very interactive, very high quality collateral. But it's fixed. It's somewhat static. If you've printed off 5,000 of these things, well, you've got 5,000 of these things to use. What AI also enables us to do is that feedback loop, Mary, not just the feedback between evolving events. We need to know about this launch or this court case or whatever has happened. We need to be up to speed. We can also feed back. So you can start to use AI for feeding in the sort of objections you're hearing, and socializing the objection handling in the context of the value that it understands you're trying to offer. And then if everyone starts to do that and feeds back, that then builds up this repository of real-time learning of what people are saying, and not just the objections, where the successes are too. And you can start to sharpen it. We think of it as a one-off. Take what we've learned in the classroom, produce some collateral, and take it out on the street. A step ahead of where many people were. But what about if we have the workshop and we develop the draft messaging and we interact with our customers and we feed back and we refine and we interact again, and the whole thing becomes dynamic and continuous. It's no, and we've advocated for a long time that planning, you shouldn't think about it once a year. It should be an iterative, constant process, right? That's one of our mantras. And I think this allows this to happen. AI allows you to really iterate sensibly and powerfully through the sales cycles.
So true. We were talking with one of our B2B clients in Europe and having a similar conversation about the potential of all this for the sales force. And one of the things that they mentioned is wow, wouldn't it be great if we could hook our CRM system into this, you know, this broader system that includes AI, and then you can start to, Sean, do even more things of the type you're talking about, including, having your finger on the pulse of how customer needs are evolving, right? If people are in a disciplined manner using a CRM system to talk about, the topics that were covered in a sales call, again, as you mentioned, Sean, client objections and the like, it's almost like you have a real-time version of the Vietnam card sort where you
Right.
can start to see, hey, you know what? These were the needs that we had identified in the last planning cycle, but they're already starting to change. You don't have to wait till next year. They're already starting to change. There's some new things that people are talking about. We need to step back. We can really look at our segmentation. We can really look at our ability to win. We can relook at our value proposition, even our positioning, and try to say, are there some things that we need to act on now to change? And that
Yeah,
dynamic nature is, what's in front of us. It's just going to keep getting better, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. Well, we hope that you have some ideas now that you might sit down with your colleague that's in sales and business development and talk through some of these options because it certainly enables a lot more growth and excitement, I think, in a company. So good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.